Yesterday, we talked about how to use stories in your copy so that you can guide your visitors and lead them to read the entire page that you design. Today, we're going to talk about design. Specifically, we're talking about the science of visual flow and how you can use this science to lead your visitors through your website. So what is visual flow? Visual flow is basically the study of how visitors to your website, how they how they read and consume the information as they are presented on the screen. For the visual flow for a mobile device is pretty straightforward because the width of the phone and people are scrolling in portrait mode most of the time. The width is very small, you just scroll from top to bottom. But if you are a web designer, then you appreciate that these days we can't only develop on a mobile phone, we need to develop across screen sizes, and that's what we call responsive web design. So some people will be visiting your site through the desktop, some through the laptop, some through tablets, some through the mobile phone. Granted, about 60% of traffic is coming through mobile phones these days, so that should be the primary layout you should design for, but you can't ignore the remaining 40%. And that's where visual flow is very important. So as far as visual flow is concerned, there are three things that you need to take note. Number one is hierarchy. And if you remember my design principles, one of the most important things to highlight in your design is contrast. And we talked about contrast via shapes, via size, and via color, right? So generally, the biggest and boldest element stand out to your customer first, or the visitor first, even though it might be at the corner of the page, at the bottom right corner of the page, because that is big and bold, that will stand out to your customer first, right? Number two, scanning patterns. So on a desktop especially, studies have been done, and it's been observed that people tend to go from left to right, and then at the top first, left to right, and then left and right below. This is what we call an F pattern or a Z pattern. Okay, so by default, if nothing stands out, which is a bad idea, if nothing stands out, this is the pattern of which people read, and this is primarily trained because people read newspapers, and that's how information is organized, right? Lastly, directional cues. So if you have, for example, an arrow pointing, or you have a headline and many arrows pointing towards that headline, then that is the thing that will get the attention. So directional cues are important, and you can use directional cues by arrows, by people's. If you, for example, have a image of a lady, and if the image of a lady is the person looking this way, then the visitor will tend to look at what the lady is looking at as well. Okay, so directional cues. So these three principles: hierarchy, scanning patterns, and directional cues. So you might question, how do you make this practical? 4 points. Number one, make your headlines and call to actions stand out. They should stand out the most, especially in your first fold. Headline, a smaller sub-headline for people who read the headline and want a bit more information, sub-headline, and then call to action. These three things should stand out, and if you remember, these three things should tell people what you do, what you offer, how can it make my life better, and what do I have to do to buy what you offer. These three things, okay? Make your headlines stand out. Use your white space strategically. You don't have to fill the entire page with content. White space is important. Having empty space makes what you want to stand out actually stand out. Okay? Number 3, guide the users with visual cues. Like an example, if you have your headline on the left, you decide to have a headline on the left side of the first fold, and an image of a user, a happy user on the right side. Then find a picture where that user is looking at the headline. That will guide your visitor's eyes to the headline. Lastly, test and optimize. I can't say that this will work for everybody, but the best way to know whether it works for you is to test. Design different styles, different variations of your page. Test using A/B testing tools to see which one converts better for you. So, this is all I have for today. See you tomorrow.